Thank you and welcome to a DLH Talkback. Today we're going to actually do a talkback not with a writer, but with someone within the OPO community. Jeff Trageser, who's the interim executive director of life sharing in San Diego, the OPO there, is joining us because I want to dig into this concept that I learned at the AOPO conference, and I want to learn more about it. So Jeffrey, thank you so much for being with Donate Life Hollywood today.
Thanks for having me.
So this often happens at the AOPO conference. I go to the AOPO conference for a variety of reasons, but as a communications person, and I find it's not just me, a lot of communications people do this, we go to the plenary sessions and they'll start talking about things and we're just writing down what they're saying and circling acronyms so that we can ask our colleagues later, like, what does this mean? And so one of the acronyms that I wrote really big on my notes is NRP, because they just kept using the term NRP, and it was in conjunction with neurocritical care, but then it felt like what they were talking about was that this NRP piece was going to be important as we look for ways to increase the number of potential donors and get more organs per donor, per potential donor, especially when we're looking at donation after cardiac death, which has multiple names now. DCD is still it. But could you tell me what NRP stands for, first of all, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. So it stands for normothermic regional perfusion. So normothermic meaning the normal temperature of the body. And the distinction there is normally when organs are recovered, they're quickly cooled and put on ice to keep them cold. Reasons we can talk about. So normothermic meaning same temperature as the body, 98.6, give or take. So that's a key distinction, that it's, and that's better for organs, right? That's what they're used to. Regional meaning we're going to restore perfusion, that's the P. Perfusion meaning the flow of oxygenated blood. Every hemoglobin molecule carries 4 oxygen molecules. So that's what blood does. It delivers the fuel to your cells and your organs. We are going to restore perfusion, but just to a region, and that's basically from the neck to the waist, just the organs that we want to restore perfusion to. So NRP meaning normothermic regional perfusion. We're going to get perfusion, oxygenated blood to a region of the body, not the entire body, at the body's normal temperature.
So, and this normothermic regional perfusion is not associated with a donor who is a brain dead donor. Is that correct?
Correct. But it makes them more similar to a brain dead donor.
Because we are not recovering those organs and cooling them down quickly. We're allowing the body and the blood flow from the heart, from the ventilated support, to provide the perfusion through the entire process of placing the organs, getting all of the teams, the surgical teams there to the donor hospital, and then right up until the end. So in many ways, we could think of normothermic regional perfusion as what occurs from the diagnosis of brain death until the first recovery of the organ.
I think that's very well said.
Talk a little bit about DCD, what it stands for now, and why DCD donation, which has been happening for a long time, but why it is such an important piece of the puzzle in ending the wait list, basically.
Absolutely. So brain death is very rare. Very few people will become brain dead in the United States. And I believe it's less than 1 in 300 deaths will ever be in that position. Most of us are going to become cardiac dead at some point before we ever become brain dead. So to end the shortage of organs for transplant, DCD really ramped up in the early 2000s. It was pushed by CMS and Health and Human Services to increase the pool of donors. And so this pool of donors, these are people who are in the ICU on a ventilator, but there's no meaningful recovery expected. And families every day across this country in every city make that decision to forego life-sustaining measures and allow their loved one to pass naturally. And that's been established in this country for quite a long time. So you don't have to stay on a ventilator in a long-term facility, with no quality of life if you don't want to. And so families make that decision every day. And some of those people in that position can also be a donor. And it's called donation after circulatory death, or DCD. And so what happens in DCD, families made a decision to stop all heroic measures, let someone pass naturally. They're usually gathered with their loved one. When the breathing machine comes out, they're no longer getting oxygenated blood. Okay, so now their organs are starved for oxygen all through the dying process. And the moment their heart stops, they're declared dead. And then they're quickly taken to the operating room so that those organs can be recovered. But when their heart stops, and even before that, when they stop getting enough oxygen into their organs start to die. The cells go through apoptosis. It is a normal, natural process, but it's very damaging to the organs. And so the longer that the organs go without oxygenated blood, the more damaged they are, and the outcomes aren't as good for the recipients. So we try to minimize that amount of warm ischemic time by just working as fast as we can to get the organs cooled down. Once they get on ice, get cooled down, get flushed, we lower the metabolism of the cells. So they don't need as much oxygen, but they're still dying. And so there's still an urgency to get those organs transplanted. With NRP.
Let me ask you one thing. So because of this, because the cells are dying from the moment that the oxygen has been removed to the point where then the heart stops, which is different for every patient, can be minutes, can be much longer than that. Because of that, with DCD donation, it used to be that we were really only able to recover and place kidneys and sometimes liver, because kidneys and liver can have that process. With the lungs and heart, you can't have that cold ischemic time as much. Right. So that was great because we need a lot of kidneys and livers are important and things like that. But from these DCD donors, the hearts and lungs were not viable for transplantation. Is that correct?
That's correct. Very rarely did we ever recover lungs, and livers too. Like you said, it wasn't that frequent because livers really 30 minutes of warm ischemic time was way too much, and so it really limited our ability to maximize the gift. Family wants to donate and help as many people as possible, but with DCD, it was pretty limited to the kidneys, as you pointed out, and occasionally livers and lungs.
Now there's sort of this new process as science does. Science looks at, okay, we're unable to recover all of the organs because of the lack of oxygenation that is occurring. So how do we solve for that? And so NRP is sort of a solve for the issue of not being able to of the decline or deterioration of the organs without blood and oxygen.
Yeah, it had been done in Europe. It's been done in Europe for a while in different ways, not quite the same way we're doing it now, but the concept was there, and it was recognized that, well, this could actually really help by essentially what you're doing is, instead of just having these organs that are sitting there getting cold, starved for oxygen, we're quickly going in and restoring that oxygenated blood while they're still in the patient's body. And so they kind of get that extra boost of energy and support, and then the organs really just do so much better because they're getting what they want and need. And so that's really opened up the opportunity. First and foremost, it was really about, could we actually transplant a heart from somebody that died from cardiac standstill? And because there had been some of this happening in Europe, and actually here in the United States in the last, 10 years, there was a lot of machine perfusion where the organs would be taken out of the body and put on a machine that would then pump oxygenated donated blood and kind of mimic what the body would do. And so there was evidence out there that, oh, wow, these organs really want oxygenated blood. They're going to do much better in our recipients. The data is there to show that. And so there are several transplant centers across the country, one of them here in San Diego, embarked on this journey to start using normothermic perfusion to start recovering hearts from patients who died of cardiac death. So in a nutshell, what happens is, as soon as the patient's heart stops, we race them into the operating room. We actually wait 5 minutes and confirm that the heart really is stopped, it has not restarted. And only then do they start the surgery. And as soon as they get to the heart, very quickly, usually within about 3 to 5 minutes after that, they put on a heart bypass machine, which recirculates oxygenated blood to all of the organs in this area, because they cannulate in the aorta. The technical details of how they cannulate, those are a little bit beyond me and my expertise, but they get the oxygenated blood recirculated to all the organs on this machine, and the heart actually will start moving again, because that's what the heart does. When it gets oxygenated blood, it will beat. It drives that process. So now the heart is actually pumping blood as well as the machine to the organs, to the liver, kidney, the lungs. They're all getting a good warm supply of oxygen, which is what they need to thrive. During that process, they can also evaluate all the organs in a very calm way. So they're able to look at them. They can see if the liver's making bile, are the kidneys making urine, is the heart beating well, are the lungs expanding well and exchanging oxygen. And so it becomes a very calm way of evaluating the organs, just like in a brain dead donor. They can look at everything, make some key decisions. They then wean off the pump, and at some point, usually it's about an hour of evaluation. Then again, they'll go ahead and clamp everything off, recover those organs. Yes, they will go on ice at that point. It's a very short amount of time. They'll go straight to the recipients, and they do much better.
We also know that, the heart is it has this internal pacemaker. We know that from brain death, that when it is receiving oxygen, it beats. It thinks things are okay. It is not receiving brain signals to beat. It is beating because that's what it does.
And they're not using electricity and defibrillators to restart it. It just starts on its own when the blood comes flowing.
If a television show, medical drama, wanted to take on NRP, what do you think are the most important things that they say, or that they show, or that they don't say and don't show? Like, I can think of one being that they don't shock the heart to restart it.
Yeah, and the key thing is this: everything that happens with NRP happens after death has been confirmed. Not only after death has been confirmed, 5 minutes after death has been confirmed, just to be extra safe. So, and the restoration of blood flow to an organ does not equal the life of the individual. Nothing about what we're doing is going to bring the donor back to life, because basically the moment they become cardiac dead, they're brain dead too. We don't recover organs for patients who are alive. So there's a hard, fast rule. And so that no, just because an organ gets restarted and does what it's supposed to do, does not mean they're alive. And if you have concerns about that, then let's slow down. Let's talk more about that.
Did you start in the opioid space by approaching families?
Yeah. So my first career was as an ICU nurse, and I was recruited then to come to life sharing in 2005, and I've been here ever since. And so my first role was as an organ procurement coordinator that spoke to families and did all of that workup that goes into it.
Did you, this is kind of off the topic of NRP, but what did you, in terms of, we've never really seen on television a very good approach, I don't think.
Yeah.
There was one, and it was because we consulted on it, and it was George Clooney's character approached Susan Sarandon's character on the final episode, like the finale episode of ER. It was really beautifully done. But
but a physician caring for a patient shouldn't be doing that. But right. Yes, I'm glad he used the right words. And
yes, he did. And that is one of the things, is trying to get a television show to actually have an organ procurement organization with an individual who is not associated with the hospital or the transplant center, who's working with the family and doing the approach. That we really haven't seen yet. But I was wondering from you, is there anything in terms of, if you were writing or telling writers about approaching families and other things, some of, again, the things that you would want to see or not want to see on television about an approach for a family?
My philosophy that developed over time and was, and again, I think everyone's a little unique in their own approach, but my approach with families was always to make sure they know they have that opportunity to help other people. It might not be what they want, at all. And that's okay. But they need to know, they have a right to know that this is an opportunity that is presented to them, because it's so rare. Like I said, less than 300 deaths, 1 in 300, I'm sorry, is even a candidate for donation. So we have a duty to let them know that, your loved one may be able to help others through organ and tissue donation. And that's it. And if that's all you've said, then that's the right thing to do. Now, it's obviously takes a lot more than that, because there's questions and there's details, but I always start with that. And then in that, I'm not even asking you to give me an answer. I'm presenting you with a little gift, a package of donation that you can choose to take if that's what you and your family would benefit from. If not, no harm, no foul. Let me make sure you just got all your answers to any questions you have. And after that, I've done what we're supposed to do. And then that is to give families a chance to decide. Most families will ask more questions. Some will say, no, we don't really want to. And then, we get a chance to talk about why they might not want to. And if there's anything we can clarify, maybe that'll help them. But I can tell you my 17-year career now in this role, I've never met one family that came back and said they wish they hadn't donated. But I've met at least a half dozen families who wish that they hadn't, because they couldn't quite get their head clear in that moment while they're in the hospital, still dealing with a loss. Some stranger came up and started talking about something else, wanted to know if they wanted to donate something, and they just said no, because they just wanted to kind of be done, and they didn't really have a chance to really consider it. That was my experience in the 7 or 8 years that I actually was still talking to families.
Right. And I will put this as a PSA to all the writers. Organ procurement organizations are the experts on donation. So, I will talk to writers a lot, and they'll be like, yeah, I got an expert consultation from a transplant surgeon. And I'm like, that's great. The transplant surgeon probably could tell you a lot about that transplant, but they don't know what happens on the donation side of things. So, again, for writers, if you're going to write a donation scene, if you're going to include organ donation at all, talk to Donate Life Hollywood, and we'll put you in touch with Jeffrey and others who have been working with families and know the donation process inside and out, because a transplant surgeon and any just medical expert does not understand brain death or brain death testing, and they definitely don't understand NRP. So, but we've got the experts for you here. Yes, and getting it right can also inspire people to check yes. I mean, that's the flip side of the coin, is that we know from research that when Hollywood gets it wrong, people will stop people from registering and stop people from saying yes.
All those people that need a transplant are no longer gonna have an option because people, were afraid to donate or had the wrong idea. So.
Yes. And all that we can do, in terms of like expanding the number of donors, expanding the number of organs available to save more lives, is look for these kinds of solutions like DCD and like NRP that allow us to then recover more organs per donor to save more lives. Because the number of people who are actually dying in the way that, where they can become donors, we can't expand that. We have no control over that part of it. So NRP is one of those incremental steps to try and get more organs available with the donors that we have. So that's awesome. All right. Thank you again, Jeffrey.
Sure.
And if I have any other questions, or if I get a writer interested in this, we'll be calling you for an expert consultation.
Okay. All right. Anything I can do to help.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
Good seeing you. Take care.
No.